BNEWS Weekly Special Report, 2019 Year in Review, and our special guest is Paul Sagarino, Burlington Town Administrator. Welcome to the program, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having me, Phil.
Thank you for joining us. Paul is a graduate of UMass with a degree in accounting. He is also a CPA, and he has a master's degree in public administration from Northeastern University. Okay, let's get right to the heart of the matter. You'll be in the job a year, roughly in March.
Yep.
But it's been an eventful year. But let's start with the transition. How helpful to you was Town Administrator Petron in that transition? You had served under him as accountant and then deputy assistant town administrator. How helpful was he in that transition?
John was a great guy to learn from. He worked with me since the time he came here, tried to groom me. He let me know a lot about the position, and again, anyone that knows John just knows that he's the kind of person that really looks out for you and tries to help you out and provide you with plenty of direction. So he was a great guy to work for, and as you know, I worked for another great guy, Bob Mercier, prior to that. Two different styles that I was able to draw from, and two very different styles, but both very effective. And I think I got sort of the best of both worlds by working for both of those.
Well, I do have to note that you established a style of your own. I've been covering or been involved in town meeting since 1979, 77, something like that. I used to be able to remember. But for the first time ever, I saw a complete presentation by the town administrator across the entire warrant, which was prepared in advance, so you didn't have to stand up there in front of people. That was done by video.
Yep.
How did you come up with that? Where did?
Well, you know, Phil, that was my first town meeting that I was sort of running the show, and it was a very important initiative. And you know, one of the things as an accountant, I'm accustomed to working in the back room. So one of the places that I was probably weakest at was probably speaking in front of large groups of people and things of that nature. So the presentation was extremely important to us, and I wanted to make sure that the important topic that we were talking about wasn't going to get lost in, you know, a poor presentation and nervousness. You forget a whole section. So we sort of came up with a way. We did it sort of low budget, believe it or not, on an iPhone. I think it came out pretty good. But you know, it was good because I was able to present the relevant and important information at town meeting without having to be concerned that I was gonna, you know, if I miss some important information there, it could have affected the outcome. So that was the genesis behind that. And of course, in the meantime, just getting a little bit more comfortable addressing the large group at the auditorium. So I think we'll get better at that as time goes on. But for that one, it was a really important initiative, and I just wanted to make sure that we got it right. So,
well, you did it without us, without the BCAT staff. We could have put you on the Starship Enterprise, for instance.
Well, you know, it
presented
actually,
from there.
It actually was very well received, and
Yeah.
I think that if anything, it popped into my head is that we don't have to be so boring at town meeting. You know, if we're going to buy a new piece of equipment, we can get BCAT to go down and film the old equipment so that we can visually demonstrate to the members, hey, there's a hole in the floor, or these are some of the reasons why we need to replace this equipment. And I think, you know, it helps with the attention span of the members too, you know, to be able to move away from someone droning on a topic to be able to see something visual and sort of go back and forth. So we think that that's something we might like to utilize in the future as well.
Well, it was very impactful, and I thought the commentary from the membership was really strong.
Yeah, I'm glad it went well.
Okay, so you are out of the box, and the first thing that happens is you get two retirements out of your two major positions in your staff. John Clancy, who I think had 32 years of service. Where is that process? Is John staying on to help with the transition?
John's gone. He's always available. We promoted his assistant, Andy, as the interim building inspector. He's a great guy. He's been working and preparing for this opportunity for a long time. He still has access to John if he needs him, and everything's going great. I mean, Andy's a great guy, and we couldn't ask for anybody better to try to take over for that position.
Yeah. Now, that department is generating about $4 or $5 million a year in revenue. It seems to be a bit overworked at this point with the abundance of development that we have. I don't want to have you commit to that, but
nope.
was it one staff added, or what is the plan in the future?
Well, when Mr. Clancy informed us that he was retiring, and at the same time we were dealing with a serious, like these guys, as you know what's gone on in town over the past couple of years. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to provide an additional inspector to help with this, the backlog of projects that are going on in town. You know, as accountants and being conservative, we didn't want to add to the head count before we really knew that this position was going to be needed into the future. As we all know that this is cyclical, and several years from now we might be sitting here with, you know, we don't want to have inspectors on the payroll that we don't have projects to inspect. So we're really cautious about how we did that. But what we were able to learn through that 2-year process was that the amount of development in town is going on, you know, unabated, and the short-term bulge that we thought that we were dealing with is going to continue on for quite a while. So that position last year was added into the full complement, so that when Mr. Clancy retired, we now have an additional inspector. So we currently have a position vacant over there.
And the full build-out on Nordblum, for instance, Northwest Park, might be still another 10, 12 years of development and redevelopment.
There is, and you know, we're not foolish enough to know that these things can turn around very quickly, and once the money dries up, that you know, we could go through a very slow period. And again, a slow period here in Burlington is still a pretty good, pretty busy building department, even when we're considered in a slow period, particularly in comparison to most other communities.
Now, we had another 35-year veteran who retired, Chief Yetman, and that was really in the midst of 2 major projects going on, although one is Fire Station 2, and then the other is the ALS conversion. Tell us about Fire Station 2, the transition from Chief Yetman, and then segue into ALS.
Yep, well, Chief Yetman, I believe, was closer to 40 years on the job, and there's actually photos of him from when the department wore dungarees as part of their uniform. So, I mean, it's he was there for quite a while, and great guy to work with, and very dedicated to the town, and we've got some good qualities. We're hoping to make appointed a fire chief on Monday evening. So we're...
Oh, you're appointing a permanent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Assistant Chief Patterson was made interim. Can you let the cat out of the bag right now, who the appointment's going to be?
Yeah, my intention is to promote Assistant Chief Patterson to the position full-time. He's again, has a long history with the department, started in 1988.
Well respected.
Well respected, has all his credentials, and you know, we're very, very confident that he can lead the department into the future. But as you know, over the past couple of years, we were very blessed that the town supported a new Fire Station 2 on the west end of town. And it's a beautiful building. I know you've been down there, and we're very proud of it. And I can say that through the building committee and Chief Yetman, the project was on time and on budget, which is a challenging thing for us in
municipal government.
Given some of the constraints that we work under. Right. But I mean, we've had fire personnel and town administrators from all over the area come to tour that station, and it really is, it's a jewel. And what it'll do is it'll allow us, as the town's needs change in the future, we'll be able to allocate additional personnel down to that station. I think, from what I understand, the call volume is about evenly split between Central Station and this station.
But it's likely to increase.
Likely to increase over on that side of town with everything we have going on over there. So we'll have the ability to reposition you know, firefighters over to that location when the time is right.
Now, tell us about ALS. That's Advanced Life Support, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Several years ago, town meeting approved a plan by the fire department we currently run BLS, which is what we would know as EMTs, and there's a next level up on that is a paramedic service, which is ALS. So town meeting very graciously provided us with the additional bodies to accomplish that, and we were able to negotiate a contract with the firefighters. Obviously, it was a very big sea change for us, so it was a very complicated negotiation.
It always is with the fire anyway.
They were great to work with on that, and very reasonable and understanding. We have a great fire department, very forward-thinking when it comes to that. We currently have 12 paramedics. And what we're working towards right now is to be able to run paramedic service on a part-time basis,
And that
Until-
would replace a outside contract that we have providing that service.
Right, we'll always have a backup. It's currently Armstrong Ambulance that provides that service to us. What we're missing is a critical mass of paramedics right now. We feel that in order to go 24/7, we need 16 paramedics.
Right.
So we have vacancies and we have retirements, but the problem we're having right now is that there's actually a shortage of paramedics out there.
Right.
So
So in the future, in new inductees into the fire department, that will be part of the criteria of
they're
their
all,
appointment?
yes, yep, we were able to add quite a few over the past few years, 12,
Right.
due to retirements and new positions. And we're really close. We got another fellow going into the academy. So we're hopeful, within a year we'll be able to go 24/7. But again, it's a manpower issue. 12 guys to provide that service. That's actually spread pretty thin. So if there's a vacation day or a sick day or something like that, it could impact our ability. So
Now,
we'll always have a backup.
What is the
without-
differential in terms of service provided between an EMT and an ALS technician?
Well, I don't know all the nuances to it. I know that paramedics can issue drugs, medications, and things of that nature, and it's a much higher level of service. I believe it takes almost a year to get a paramedic certification, so it's a pretty rigorous program for somebody to go through. And again, our EMTs are great. They've been providing great service as well, but I've talked to many longtime members of the department, and they can't stop talking about the additional benefit that these paramedics are providing, even though we're not providing the service now.
Right.
Just the knowledge, and they're saving lives.
Training.
They're literally saving lives.
Well, we are faced with that more so than other suburban communities or rural communities, in that 128, Route 3 go directly through our town. So pre-trauma, for instance, I guess is what you might call ALS, pre-trauma treatment becomes more and more important.
And again, they're able to identify right away when we get to a scene, as opposed to waiting a couple minutes for the Armstrong folks to come in. They're able to identify, hey, we need to get this person to the hospital immediately, no waiting around. And their training puts them at a higher level in terms of providing these medical services. And like I say, some of the most senior members of the department have raved to me in terms of how much of an enhancement this paramedic is to what the service they're able to provide to the residents.
Wonderful. Okay, next up would be the DPW garage, which I was on the board from, I think, 82 to 89. And at that time, we were talking about replacing the DPW barn, which was old and decrepit. I think it was 35 years old at that time. I don't even know what the groundbreaking was on it, but tell us about that process.
Well, first off, I just want to point out 82 to 89 was junior high to high school for me. High school graduation.
Thank you for that comparison. Not that people at home can't tell the difference.
Well, I think I saw you at the groundbreaking, and I think I had told you that we had toured all the town facilities several years ago, and all of us agreed that the facilities most in need of replacement were the public works facilities, as well as the recreation maintenance facilities up at Overlook. They were old, very old sites. They weren't new when we took them over. So I think you had estimated the age on a couple of those facilities, and it's
and I don't even think I was within a decade of what the actual number was, but we know it's over 75 years, that's for sure.
I mean, it's long overdue, and we're really happy that the town supported the initiative. We're going to have 2 sites on Great Meadow Road, and they're both going to be first class, and we're bringing both departments in together. There's a lot of overlap in the types of equipment and the types of work that's done. And we have, as everybody knows, we have first class public works, first class rec maintenance departments, and I'm really pleased that we're able to provide these folks with a first class facility to work in. And even furthermore, a lot of the equipment we use in those 2 functions is extremely expensive, $250,000 trucks.
Sure.
Currently, being housed outside because we don't have the space inside. So a big component of what these public works facilities are is a large garage, so that we can keep the equipment indoors, outside of the weather, and
and lifts and other high-tech equipment that are necessary to maintain these things.
And furthermore, just the safeguards that are built in from an environmental standpoint. If there's a gas spill, everything is all state of the art in terms of protecting the environment. And again, it's just, these are two facilities that we're going to be really proud of. Again, we look at it as one facility, it's on two sites, but you know, we're really proud and we're very thankful for the town supporting that initiative.
Right. Now, in the last, I think, 6 or 7 years, we did the Marshall Simons overhaul. We rebuilt the Memorial School completely. We've done Fire Station 2. Now we've got another $30 million that's on the schedule. How is this fitting into the bonded indebtedness?
You know, when I came to the town, one of the things I was most impressed with was the work that we've been done on our long-term borrowing schedule. A lot of thought goes into it. We work with Brian Curtin, the treasurer. At the time, it was Bob Mercier, our financial folks. And the town has a very well-developed plan for borrowing for projects, and we just we build it based around the fact that we know that we're going to have to replace something in the future.
Sure.
So we build sums of money in there, and we try to determine what the budgetary impact is going forward. And again, from the time I came here, that was probably the most impressive thing. When I came in the door, I was like, wow, these guys do an unbelievable job at this, and we've tried to continue on with that tradition. We have some big ticket items out there. You know, I think just as any community does, we have some facilities that will need to be replaced in the future. We have a police station, which is substandard at this point.
Should that be next up? By the way, I went to the 6th grade in that school, so. Just,
I wasn't going to say that.
Okay,
But,
so that was 1962, and it was decrepit then.
And you know, we know very well that the school department has some infrastructure needs as well. I mean, this facility isn't going anywhere, but it's certainly there's some aspects of the high school that require you know, major renovation, the HVAC systems,
HVAC
and
in particular, sure.
from what I understand, the science labs are antiquated. The building's not going anywhere, as you know. It's suitable size and everything, but it definitely needs some upgrades to it. And I'm aware that the school committee is sort of discussing what to do with a couple of the elementary schools, Pine Glen and Fox Hill, to sort of determine, but we know that we have some future needs to invest in.
So we're retiring old debt at roughly 4.25%, the bonds that were written 20 years ago. We're putting on new debt, municipal debt, double tax-free debt, somewhere in the order of 2.40 or 2.5%.
The interest rates are very low, but the way that the debt is structured doesn't always result in a coupon rate that's low. We receive sometimes premiums up front that we use. The law now allows us to use towards the project, but sometimes it may result in a future outpayment of 3 or 4% because that's what the markets are looking for. We can't, they can't sell the 1% long-term bond, so they have to structure it in a way, and they give us a cash payment up front. They changed the law several years ago, and now we're able to use that money directly towards the project and thereby reduce the amount that we're borrowing. So, but all in all, you know, we're getting a great deal in terms of the interest rate. We're a AAA rated community, so we get the best interest rate available. So.
Well, now that you mentioned that, I was stunned by the Moody's report that reflected that they were concerned that we didn't have enough debt. That our debt service, our bonded debt was low.
We've been working really hard at borrowing more money, but it's slow. It happens slowly. But you know, we've had some big ticket items the past couple of years. So the fire station complete recently. We're just getting ready to start on the public works projects, $32 million. We have some of these other needs built into the schedule, and all we're trying to do there is try to mitigate the impact to the overall budget, and ultimately mitigate the impact to the taxpayers. As I've told everyone, we can afford to do all of these things. We can't afford to do them all today. But if you feel, I always feel like, you know, 10 years in the history of a community is like a blink of an eye. Right. You know, it's like a half a year in a human's life. So, you know, it's in relatively short order, we'll be able to address, you know, some of these needs, and we're going to continue to have to invest in these things.
Okay, let's talk about the taxpayer, and why isn't the taxpayer getting a break? Every year we're looking at 4% increases. We're flush with cash. Correct me if I'm wrong. A couple of these are dedicated funds, obviously, but I think we certified $13 million in free cash, $10 million in stabilization, $8 million in OPEB, and $6 million in health insurance trust. I mean, we're talking close to $40 million in cash, yet we're still increasing the taxes.
Well, the way the model works is we cannot just strictly mitigate the impact on the residents. Reserves are very relative. So if 13 million is a great number for us, I'm very, very proud, very happy with that number.
Free cash.
Free cash.
Yeah.
Woburn has 28 million. So everything's relative.
Right.
Reading has 15 million. So they don't have nearly the same economy that we have. So numbers are relevant. Communities maintain their reserves in different ways. You know, I know Wilmington has a very high free cash, but they don't do stabilization.
Right.
You know, some communities don't have excess capacity that we have.
And few of them do OPEB, correct? And
Very few of them do an OPEB.
that is controversial frequently at town meeting. Explain for us what OPEB is.
OPEB is the liability for employee benefits in the future. You know, retirement benefits, health insurance for retirees, and life insurance for retirees, essentially. So for many years, cities and towns did this on a pay-as-you-go basis, and that worked out fine.
Sweeping it off into other generations' problems, right?
Essentially. Well, at the same time, taking the previous generation's problem and paying those bills too, right? So it is a cycle, but I think at some point in time, in particular, when the financial companies started experiencing problems, and I forget the name of the company, but they were purchased, and because it wasn't disclosed that they owed all this money.
Yeah, General Electric Finance, I think, is what it was.
It was something along those lines. It was a financial company that sort of brought to light that, hey, we need to start calculating this. We need to start recording it in our financial statements. Currently, there is no requirement that we set aside money for this. But we are, and we feel as though the taxpayers in the future will benefit greatly from that decision. The amount of money that they would like us to set aside every year is unattainable for most communities. And what I try to tell folks is that, you know, we don't know what the financial markets are going to do. We don't know how these investments are going to do. But one thing I'm certain of is 30 years from now, they'll still be talking about a liability for health insurance. But I feel as though future generations will say, hey, you know, this thing isn't solved for us yet, but
at least they had the foresight.
Good move by those guys to
right.
set aside a little bit money every year just to think about the problem. I mean, we wouldn't be able to put in the amount of dollars that the financial statements say that we were required to make it zero. But at the same time, I just feel as though that everything that we do is just going to be a huge benefit to the folks that are here in the future.
Prudent management, essentially.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the tax rate. You set that back a couple of weeks ago. I think the average home now is $570,000 in town. Excuse me. Classification is the ability to tax the resident at a lower rate than the commercial sector. Tell us about that split.
Well, what can I say about that other than Burlington is in one of the most premium positions in the state in terms of our ability to lower the residents' taxes on the backs of our large business community.
Because they're dying to get here. It's beneficial for them from a profit standpoint to be located here.
Absolutely. We're a prime location. The town forefathers years ago did a tremendous job planning out the town, separating out business from residential. As they saw 128 coming in, seeing the opportunity that brought to the town. You know, I look at this as the premier place to do business, you know, outside of Boston, Cambridge. And, you know, that really does have a massive impact on the residents' tax bills. I think the statistics are somewhere along the lines of the total value in town is 2/3 residential. But the residents only pay one third of the tax burden. And again, it's a tricky financial model. And as we're looking at the residents' bills, we're also, we need to stay competitive from a business standpoint. You know, we don't want to drive businesses out of town by having two taxes. So it is a balancing act. But I think the selectmen have always made decisions on the classification that would to benefit the residents to the maximum amount possible. So
now my home is probably in the average range, and I think my tax bill is about $4,800. And when I compare that to some of my peers in other communities, it seems to be quite reasonable, particularly in the North Reading, Wakefield areas. It seems to be very competitive.
You know, this is a very expensive state to live in. It's a very expensive part of the state to live in. All we have to compare ourselves with is our competition, and I think that statistically, we're the lowest taxes around. As you know, we don't carry a lot of fees. That's another no-no
No
here in
fees,
Burlington.
no.
We try not to have
No school fees.
no
busing
fees.
fees.
We try to minimize
Yeah.
fees. And, I received the numbers from John Sanchez last week. We're by far the lowest average water sewer bill within 128. It's not even close. A couple $100 a year for the average average household versus in some communities upwards of $1,600 a year. So
Now, let's go to the culture of the town, the class of the town, if you would, in that now with the average home at 570, anything that's an entry-level home now is being knocked down because the ground is worth more than the house on it, with the house. Now, over the last several years, we've approved an abundance of these rental units, over 1,000. Now, the problem here, as I see it, is when we approve these units, granted we get the tax revenue, but all of the capital appreciation goes to these large multinational developers, whereas if we had a housing initiative that, say, efficiency one-bedroom condos, then we could both allow entry-level people, our own children, for instance, although in a competitive basis, but that appreciation would accrue to the individual homeowner instead of the large corporate developer. What can we do, and what leadership role can the Board of Selectmen take in establishing that kind of initiative, which would fill in that gap in entry-level housing?
Quite frankly, Phil, probably the only way for us to do that is to take matters into our own hands and actually become the developer of that housing. Once the state gets involved in it, it gets pretty tricky. They have rules, regulations. We've created, as you know, Burlington is at the forefront of creating affordable housing opportunities. But what we've heard over and over from our residents is sometimes based on the guidelines, it's not really that affordable.
Well,
And,
let me use it as an example. My wife and I are empty nesters now. And as I said, my taxes are about $5,000. Now, the affordable elderly homes, elderly rental units they're talking about, are between $1,400 and $1,800 a month.
Yep.
Now, am I going to jump out of a place that is costing me $5 or $6 or $7 when you count heating and electricity, and jump into something that's $18,000 annually with no capital appreciation? It just doesn't make any sense.
It's a difficult one. I think part of it is an education process that we've sort of recently understood that we need to start educating some residents. For some residents, it may sound once you get past the sticker shock and start to add up the expenses that they have in maintaining their home, water, sewer, albeit low, repairs and maintenance, taxes,
right,
and just the general not wanting to shovel, not wanting to, mow the lawn and things like that. Those are the benefits that someone would get from moving into a different opportunity. I think we need to do a better job of educating our residents on that. But yes, I mean, that is a real problem that $1,800 a month to most rational people doesn't sound like affordable. And again, I think we lose the ability with these state programs. I think Burlington residents get the first crack at them, but after that, affordable can go to anybody. And,
well, look at Route 3A, for instance. Now, across from the CVS, those condos came in and did very well, apparently. Yes. But the Town Center initiative has failed on the other side of the street when you go from Dunkin' Donuts all the way up to the bookstore and beyond. That's all a high-rent district in terms of value, but seems to have a lower end use. Couldn't we establish an initiative where we went to the developer, the owner, and said, look, we'll give you 1,000 entry-level units, give you zoning for it, bring us in a program?
Well, like I say, I think one of the town center districts, and that was created before I got here, so I'm not an expert on it, but I think the housing portions of that district were built immediately. So there was a tremendous demand to build that housing in the center. I know that on the other side of the street, had many conversations with property owners. The problem is that once the amount of money is invested in to make it what we want it to be, all those tenants will most likely not be able to afford those. So there's a financial problem there, and that there may be a willingness to invest, but then I think you outprice the market there once you start.
Well, if you kept, for instance, say a little city type of arrangement where you had storefronts underneath, walk-ups 2 or 3 stories of walk-ups above them. And in behind there, although I know it would be difficult to displace some of the trucking companies in the lower level uses, but we also have the state sand barn. When is that going to go? That's sitting on property that's worth a couple of million
Well,
bucks.
we have a brand new sand barn right next to it. So, like I say, I think, one of the things we're losing most in Massachusetts is commercial industrial property. It's all becoming housing, and there is a real need for hardcore industrial property like that. So I hope that we do find a place for some of those businesses to stay, within town and within eastern Massachusetts. We all need services. We all need companies with trucks coming in with
Just not in my backyard.
Yeah.
That's a NIMBY one if there ever was one.
Certainly not with. I lost my train of thought there, but
That's all right, because they're waving me off.
we all need that. We all need these types of businesses.
Absolutely, and those services. Close with your impression of the Boston Celtics. I know you're a Celtic nerd like I am.
Huge fan. I'm really excited about the team. I really feel like the teamwork, and they're really gelling without certain players. I think you and I both know who they may be, but they really seem to be back to the team that we really enjoy and support, as opposed to the selfish, whiny professional athletes. I really feel like we've got a great nucleus there, and we're really put in a good place for the future.
Right, and then we're loaded with additional draft choices, so deals can be made down the line.
And I just wanted to tell you, I am a listener, and I took your advice, and I went out and I bought a couple of suits. I tried to go to some of your stores, the fancy Italian suits, Rione, or whatever the names you gave me, and I didn't realize that, it was like buying an engagement ring to buy a suit, 6 months salary. So I ended up at K&G Men's Smart. I hope you don't mind. So I took your advice halfway anyway.
Okay, great, Paul. Once again, our guest today has been Paul Sagarino, Burlington's new town administrator, 10 months into the job, but already a long-term employee in other positions. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
We're